This is a big, beautiful pin oak tree. Despite its beauty and providing wonderful shade for many years, it was simply too close to the house, posing a threat to its structure, dropping countless leaves every year, and I made the difficult decision to have this tree removed. That is a very daunting decision to make as a homeowner, particularly because of its proximity to the house. It's so close that I wanted to make sure that I had people who knew what they were doing, were very comfortable removing a tree, and I got lots of recommendations from people. And the ones who had the most experience and best reputation were PC tree removal. One word of caution to anyone having this kind of work done. There are 4 to 6 guys coordinating and working together while working at a very dangerous height with heavy and powerful equipment, and every move must be done right to ensure nothing goes wrong. And that means no one gets hurt and there is no damage to the house for any reason. If you are a homeowner and you have hired people to remove a tree from your property, whatever you do, while they're working, don't distract them. You may want to ask them to do something a particular way or ask them to do some additional work, and you need to resist these urges because you have plenty of time to talk to these people while they're on the ground, and when they are 30 feet up in the air, it is not the time to start a conversation. Don't take it personally if they give you guidance up front to tell you that this is a bad idea. This is incredibly dangerous work, and the best thing that you can do is stay out of their way. With that said, I hope that you are able to find a tree removal service that includes people who are as competent and efficient as these guys were at removing the tree from my house. They not only removed this one, but also did trimming on a number of others, and they just brought such a degree of competence and confidence to the work. It made me feel good that I was getting work done by people who knew what they were doing, and I did not ever have any kind of concern that there would be damage to the house despite the proximity of this tree being just right next to the house. And it's pretty amazing when you see the work that they do, and they're, spending hours in these trees, physically climbing them while carrying chainsaws, and just having to do a lot of coordination with each other. There's a lot of room for something to go wrong, just a miscommunication because they're at a great height compared to the people that they're coordinating with. They actually have to coordinate the handling of the ropes between the person who's in the tree and people on the ground, and then additionally you've got people sometimes who are using chainsaws on the ground to get rid of and break up limbs that have already come down, while somebody at great height is trying to get people's attention and communicate something to them. Additionally, scouts take note. The knots that they tie have to be just right as well to serve the purpose that they need to serve. It's pretty incredible often to see they're attached to the tree by, maybe a bungee or one rope that is anchored to one limb, and then they've tied off the limb that they're intending to cut so that it doesn't come down quickly and cause damage or injury. The limb can be safely lowered down to the ground or to the roof, whatever's appropriate. The other thing you'll notice sometimes is when that limb is cut, it's not always possible to predict how it's going to swing. They try to obviously place the knot in a point that's a good place to get it to go in the direction that they're hoping, but it's not always predictable. So they have to be really aware of their surroundings, what they're anchored to, what their team members are doing down below, and also ensure that, for example, before they start cutting, everyone down below is really conscious of what's going on, and they've got a tight rope that's actually going to support the limb as soon as it is released from the trunk, because that helps to ensure that it doesn't swing wildly. And that's probably the thing that they most want to prevent, is some sort of unpredictable swing, because you're at that height, you don't want to get hit by it. The limbs are a lot heavier than they might appear, and you'll see in the end when the tree trunk as a whole comes down, just an example of how incredibly massive it all is, much more so than you might expect. And so in addition to just appreciating the fact that there's a lot going on here and you really want to stay out of the way, it's also clear that you want to make sure that you find people who are very comfortable doing this kind of work, and that they've got quite a few years of experience under their belt, not necessarily on a individual to individual basis, but really as a team, right? Because if you have somebody there who's got 35 years of experience being up in trees and can help to guide and direct, then you can have some folks involved who are also like apprentices, right? And still trying to learn and understand how to do this work safely. But that just is so important to kind of have, I think, a respect for the work that's being done. Now, this whole process took place over the course of about a day. Started in the morning and then ended in the evening. And they not only came and completely removed this tree, which you'll see this whole process, but also trimmed up quite a few other trees that were also required getting way up there in the tree in order to take down additional limbs that were hanging over the house and posing a bit of a danger. Interestingly, too, these guys are really knowledgeable about trees, so you can ask them questions about, for example, ones that maybe you think might be of concern, that, sometimes there's not really a reason to be. So the type of tree really matters. There are some kinds of trees that you really want to keep trimmed regularly so that they don't get too wide and sprawling, because they tend to have limbs that are more brittle, that if they collect ice and get maybe a good strong wind, they will split in half or come down on your home. And then there are others that are maybe native to the region and super hardy and really hardwood that there's really nothing to be concerned about with. So they might look like they're leaning or, in an area where you wouldn't want them to be, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that there's a problem. So I definitely would advise getting consultation from an arborist, like these guys, maybe once a year, once every couple of years, just to make sure that you're taking care of the trees that you need to. I don't know if you can quite notice, but over on the right side there's actually a power line that goes through the cedar trees that are in the back there. And I have not done as much to cut back the cedar trees because the electric company in this area comes out, and unfortunately the most recent visit I wasn't there to supervise and say please don't cut that much, but they will cut back as much as they feel they need to in order to make sure that the trees don't get into the power lines. So I've been reluctant to do any additional cutting, but more would probably be a good idea. And of course, it's always good to have that trimming done by a team of people who have not only some knowledge of how to best do that for the welfare of the tree, but also who have your best interest in mind. So, for example, when the electric company comes out and trims trees, the reason that I like to be there is because I want to be able to, keep them from just hacking them to bits such that they will die very soon, which is probably, they won't all do that. I'm certainly not wanting to say that that's true of every person who manages trees for electric companies, but they're more likely to, because they're just trying to get the job done as quickly as possible. They just have a little bit more of an incentive to do that. And also to make sure that the trees aren't going to grow up back into the power lines. So they also have an incentive to make sure that the lines remain clear, right? Because they're not going to want to have to come back to service lines that prematurely before they would absolutely have to. Whereas if you hire somebody, then they're more likely to just trim the tree back just enough that's necessary to keep it out of the lines, and also will take care of additional branches that maybe are getting a little bit unwieldy or that could stand to be cut back so that you just don't have maybe two branches that are awfully close to one another. Or just to give the tree its best look that's possible. Because as a tree grows over time, if you kind of assess it and trim it back in the right places, then it's actually going to take a better shape than if you just kind of let it grow and randomly nature takes away certain branches or, through disease or whatever may happen. So back to the process at hand here, I was really impressed at how even when there is so little tree left, they're constantly having to manage which branch they're attached to, how they're going to cut back, and that was kind of, this part of the process was the most surprising to me, just how well they're able to, decide which branch to attach their own safety cables to, and then also the process of getting down these big portions of tree. I mean, it's really part of the trunk that need to come down and do it safely. It's really hard because they don't have nearly as much leverage from across the tree itself, so I expected to see that they would be much more at the mercy of just what gravity and fate provide as far as like which way each piece swings and stuff. But they're still actually being quite deliberate about it and, taking all the possible precautions that they can. They're always tied off onto the tree itself and then very mindful of what portion of the tree they're taking down and what direction they want it to come down so that it doesn't hit them or land on somebody down below. So it's just a pretty amazing process to watch. This is now just the very, very top of the tree. And it was so strange to watch this coming down, actually, because this tree's been here for as long as I've been here, and I was not the one that planted it. I don't know why anybody decided to let a tree grow quite that close to the house, but it's actually a good lesson to homeowners as well. I mean, somebody I heard made the comment that a tree that's not wanted in a yard is a weed, but I'll just add to that it's a pretty costly weed to have removed, right? You can't just pick it out of the ground. So it has given me a greater appreciation for the decision as a homeowner to plant a tree or not. I mean, it's great to have trees, and I particularly love like the older neighborhoods that have these large mature trees, and I still have quite a few left on the property that are large and very mature. But I would think twice about putting in too many, maybe that aren't in a good place in terms of being too close to the house, or maybe being overcrowded, which is also quite a possibility, just depending on how much yard space you have. You don't want to have a tree be overcrowded and end up unhealthy. And just in general, I mean, you don't want to have a tree where you aren't going to want it for years and years and years to come. One thing that we don't often think about is that the roots of the tree are as big as the canopy overhead. And, if you're thinking about putting a tree somewhere, I would definitely advise getting out the good old tape measure and really looking at, what's the larger size that this tree could grow to be, and make sure that it's really, really far enough away from the house. You can also see some good images on, I'm trying to think, some of the like extension schools and stuff, where they talk about plants, and that it's really important to have trees far enough away from the house also because of moisture management. So a tree's roots can actually affect how much moisture there is in the ground. Look at that thing coming down. Oh my gosh. That was the one time when I was actually scared for Roy up in the tree, because that thing came down pretty quick, and I mean, that is a big piece of wood, and for a second I thought it had hit his foot, but I'm pretty sure it would have broken his foot. So when I saw him kick it, I felt a little bit better. So I'm just gonna let you watch the last portion of this without speaking over it, but I will say this wedge that they cut in the tree, I'm sure that there's a special term for it. I don't know what it's called, but they leave that behind, and I think that must be an arborist tradition or something, because I think they do that for any tree that they cut down. You can see the guys pulling on it to get it to come in the proper direction. And he's down. It's pretty amazing. They pretty quickly disassembled it and hauled off the pieces in the biggest dolly that I've ever seen in my life. It's like can fit 2 people on it. It's just really impressive. All of this work that was done, and it was done safely and well and efficiently. So I did not have to coordinate with having people out at my house, for multiple days in a row. They just came out, got the job done, and then it was done. And that is my favorite way to have work done at my house, for sure. Now, the first thing that I noticed when the tree was gone was just how much more light was streaming into the backyard. So that will help with my ability to grow things in the backyard, including grass. And I'll show a couple more scenes of the tree coming down at different speeds, because it's just so impressive. This just gives you a sense of the scale of how much tree there was. It's really incredible. And I feel very fortunate that everything went really smoothly and well, and having that tree removed was just a really good experience overall. And that concludes my tree removal video, combined with some tips and tricks and suggestions. Take care.